Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. The topic of today's video, leftist naivete. Just pure old ignorance. You know, whenever I hear these leftist politicians speak, and a lot of the times we're talking about city leaders of some of the most populous metropolitan areas in the country, I'm shocked at the level of stupidity. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but there's this level of ignorance of basic economics and just understanding of the issue at hand. You know, it's just stunning. It's actually stunning. And generally I ask myself two questions when exposed to ignorant leftist thought. The first is, how is anybody voting for this crap? And the second is, how is anything ever gonna get better with these people in charge? Today we're talking about the leftist view on illegal immigration. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright, so this is Michelle Wu, the current mayor of the city of Boston. And here's her stance on illegal migration.
Every person, every human being has the legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum or shelter, and those policies have been in place for a long time. But when the review of that individual's particular situation and the then decision to allow the pathway to stay and or work authorization that comes along with that, when that process is so drawn out, people are stuck. They are looking to work, looking to contribute, looking to be in a safe democracy where they can raise their families. And we at the city level are now dealing with many of the impacts of the processes having people fall through the cracks at the federal level. So we're working very closely with the state. This is affecting municipalities across the Commonwealth to be able to triage the situation, create temporary housing so that families can get settled.
Now, I don't know if Michelle Wu has been paying attention to the current situation, but little Michelle, you do realize that New York City and Chicago are currently crumbling under the pressure of this illegal migration crisis. Apparently, she didn't get the memo, and she'd rather virtue signal about temporary housing and every human being's legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum or shelter. It's time to start shipping migrants from El Paso and the Rio Grande Valley straight to Boston. I mean, these very smart people are asking for it. Michelle Wu would rather virtue signal and continue to market this fake promise of asylum and amnesty to illegal migrants than face the actual facts of the situation. Her rhetoric is incredibly irresponsible. She's conflating people seeking asylum, people who are fleeing political persecution, with economic migration. And you could tell by the rhetoric, right to work, right to contribute and participate in society. And then on top of that, the right to temporary housing. It's the perfect recipe for disaster. It's actually the exact rhetoric that's led to the current crisis that we're currently living through. This overly emotional, naive understanding of the world. More than 90% of the people who are crossing the border are economic migrants and will never be granted asylum or refugee status in American courts. You are selling them a fake dream. She literally said, and this is a quote, "Every human being has the legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum or shelter." That is completely incorrect. Only people who are legitimately seeking asylum have the legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum. And actually, based on international standards, you're supposed to seek asylum in the first country available, not cross over half the freaking world to make it to the United States. A lot of people now showing up at the southern border are coming from the Middle East, India, Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, the list goes on. And it's because of this kind of idiotic rhetoric. And another idiotic element, again, horribly poor choice of words here, Michelle Wu claims that the millions of people illegally crossing over are looking to contribute to American society. You know, if the current influx of illegal migrants was contributing to America, it probably wouldn't be dubbed a crisis then, would it? We probably wouldn't be seeing left-wing mayors like Brandon Johnson of Chicago and Eric Adams of New York ringing the alarm bells, calling this an unsustainable crisis, and even going as far as saying the current crisis will, quote, destroy the city.
You know, the city is being destroyed by the migrant crisis.
Well, what we have is clearly an international and federal crisis that local governments are being asked to subsidize. And this is unsustainable. None of our local economies are positioned to be able to carry on such a mission.
You know, it's all fun and games. The Democrat rhetoric on this issue was all a bunch of virtue signaling nonsense. Since the start has essentially been a bunch of virtue signaling nonsense. It's very easy to virtue signal when it's not in your backyard, but mark my words, watch how Michelle Wu's rhetoric is going to change. Once Greg Abbott starts sending migrants over to Boston, it's very easy for Democrats to virtue signal about asylum seeking and no human is illegal and blah blah blah, free housing and free healthcare, when it's not happening in their city or their state, when they're creating the crisis but then dumping the problem on a state like Texas. Now all of a sudden that Texas is saying F off essentially, shipping the crisis to where it belongs, where it all started, in Democrat strongholds. Well, now it's a crisis, now it's a problem. I don't know about you guys, but I'm done with the left-wing idiocy. Illegal migrants are not asylum seekers. Illegal migrants do not contribute economically, at least not for regular folk. I'm sure they do for the Koch brothers. I'm sure they do for the multinational conglomerates who love the cheap labor and fund these open border amnesty projects. But for regular people, for the lower and middle class, they make life harder. They make it harder to find a job. They make it easier for corporations to offer lower wages. They put regular handymen out of business. Why pay an American citizen X amount of dollars an hour when you could pay an illegal migrant a fraction of that rate? These Democrat politicians are just constantly attempting to pull on your heartstrings. It's either they're attempting to emotionally manipulate you while they have an ulterior motive, or they're simply naive and don't understand what the hell they're talking about. Michelle Wu obviously understands very little about illegal migration. She understands very little about the human suffering. She understands very little about the economic elements, and her proposed solutions will do nothing but cause more problems. Look across Democrat cities and you will see a common denominator of extreme, and I mean intense, naivete. Look at what's going on in San Francisco. Their policy standpoint when it comes to drug abuse and homelessness has been, quote, harm prevention. Well, what have they prevented? Absolutely nothing. People are dying on the streets of San Francisco every day. This is what San Francisco looks like.
When I was a kid, my biggest worry in school was forgetting my locker combo. Now these kids in San Francisco have this. Homeless drug addicts, after getting off the school bus, who the heck thought this was a good idea?
Recent high-profile cases of organized retail theft have cast an ugly pall on cities like San Francisco.
That's what happens when you follow your heart, when you follow your emotions, instead of understanding the cold, hard facts and making the tough decisions required of a leader. And honestly, I think at the end of the day, that's really the issue. Many of these politicians don't have what it takes to lead. A lot of the times they can tell a story, but the qualities that you'd expect in a strong leader do not exist. Actually, you know what? Here's a great example to show you the type of naivete that I'm talking about. Let's go back to Chicago with Brandon Johnson. He recently said this.
In order for us to have a better, stronger, and safer Chicago, it really requires the full force of government. We have stood up an entire office dedicated to reentry. So individuals who are returning to our communities who have been incarcerated because of failed policies, we'll have a welcoming space for them. I've added a $500,000 for restoration and reparations to address, again, the cycle of violence, which looks like school closings, closing of mental health facilities, of which I've invested in now. And so in order for us to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, it requires investments. And that's what this budget has done.
That is textbook left-wing naivete. We're going to stop crime. How exactly? By giving criminals taxpayer dollars. Essentially, let's give the criminals money and then ask them, please, are you satiated? Are you satisfied? Please don't rob us. Please don't murder us. Yeah, that's going to work. The problem is that gang members don't have enough money. They need more money. Then they're going to change their ways and overnight the culture is going to shift. Yeah, I'm sure that's the way it's going to play out. Absolute idiocy from the pseudo-intellectual, naive left, as per usual. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.